Well, peace, friends. I'm Pastor Tom Arthur, the pastor of Sycamore Creek Church and the leader of the Reach Movement team here in the West Michigan, actually not West Michigan. Oh man, I almost blew that one. The Michigan Conference of the United Methodist Church. The Reach Movement is building a movement of churches that grow and multiply. In May, you may have tuned in to one or more of our three first ever church different webinars. We had a great time having conversations with a whole bunch of different church leaders across the whole nation. We were exploring what it's like to be on the front end of the adaptive curve when it comes to this whole COVID pandemic thing. The world, of course, is quickly changing, and every church team needs to adapt in some way to make more disciples of Jesus Christ, to transform the world. So make sure you go back and check those out if you're just with us here. For today's webinar and the next two, on the third Thursdays of August, September, and October, we're trying something new. Again, we're always adapting here as well at Reach Resources. And we are letting you sit in on a digital coaching session with Cathy Townley. Cathy is here with us. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Grateful to be here.
As many of you may know, Cathy is a worship coach and consultant who works with new church starts and existing churches. She's also the author of a couple of great books. I have read both of them. Let's see if we can get those up here on the screen. Missional Worship and Building Worship Bridges. Cathy, we're waiting on pins and needles for your next book about digital worship, building worship bridges digitally. So each of our hashtag digital worship coach sessions will focus on a different part of online worship. For our first webinar, I get to play the guinea pig. I'm putting myself up under Cathy's microscope. I'm here at Sycamore Creek. Cathy is going to put the spotlight on how we get the word out about our digital worship services, how we begin the worship online, and how we keep people engaged during the service up to the sermon, Now, the second session of this whole thing is going to be with Stephanie Norton of Hartford United Methodist Church. We're going to put the spotlight on the digital sermon and like that part of the worship service, the actual sermon, and how we can make it more engaging and effective. And then in October, Cathy is going to coach Pastor Matt Bestay of Valley Church in Allendale. And we'll talk about how to improve digital services in the time from the service and then or the sermon on into the rest of the week. All right, so you get this. This one's going to be before the sermon, second one on the sermon, third one post-sermon into the week. Along the way, we're going to be joined by Dave Wassinger. Dave is our media guy here at Reach Resources. Dave, Dave is hiding in the background here in his basement, but he's on the thing. Dave, you want to turn your video on and let people see you there. Dave is a video producer for Lansing Community College, and Dave is kind of our resident tech expert. All right, so if we have questions about tech stuff, we'll go to Dave. Hey Leslie, why don't you spotlight Dave there so we make sure that folks see him. I mean, his like basement is just he's like got the Unabomber action going on down there, like every good media tech guy working at home. Thank you, Dave. So Dave might jump in with some technical questions. Of course, Dave, you're kind of under the spotlight with me because a lot of what we do, you've helped us here at Sycamore Creek do as well.
This is true. So yeah. I'm kind of scared.
Yeah. So he'll answer questions on how to triumph with technology. I didn't write that. Leslie wrote that. Leslie doesn't obviously know you.
Yeah, at least or at least attempt to, right?
Yeah. All right. We can turn Dave off. He's been on the screen long enough. Before we get to Cathy, if you're watching on Facebook, would you please share? Would you share this this video out with, there's a lot of people in your church who perhaps need to engage what we're doing here today. So be sure to share it out so folks can know about it. Your members can take the opportunity to join in as well today. Don't forget that you can post questions in the Q&A section of Zoom if you're in here on Zoom. I see several of you are, or in the comments on Facebook. And our Reach Resources executive producer, Leslie Schneider. Leslie, go ahead and spotlight yourself so folks can see your wonderful face and your amazing purple hair, or pink hair.
Pink hair.
Pink hair. Leslie's going to be following those comments, moderating the Q&A later in the webinar. All right. So Cathy, that's who we're really here to talk to today. We live in our world right now where we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But we do know one thing, at least I think we know it. Digital church is here to stay. I feel like that's not just an interruption, at least that's my forecast. It's a disruption. And what we're hoping that you can help us embrace it a little more and not just like be bitter about it, but actually do something positive with it, incorporate it in everything we do as our churches, even after all the restrictions are lifted, whenever that is. I know at Sycamore Creek, we're planning 12 months of this, friends. So we're going to, I don't know about you, but we're planning to be in this for a while. Cathy, you've worked with our Michigan conference for a lot of years, developing a network group to help churches launch a new worship service.
Yes.
To reach new people. And you've got a new network group helping churches launch a digital worship service called R2L, or Ready to Launch.
Yes.
And you put together a really sweet video about that. So let's watch that video here just real quick, so folks know what you've got to offer here. So here's the R2L, Ready to Launch.
Church pastors and church people, you have said, do not really have a vision of what modern worship could be. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. They develop the worship service around themselves and their own personal preference.
New people will only be able to find out the answers to their questions about Jesus in an environment that culturally matches the way they live their lives.
Man, that got my heart running.
I like that background music.
Cathy, obviously you were a video editor or something before all of this, or have you had to learn all of that?
No, I've learned it all. In fact, you say the new book, and really it's the videos. I mean, that's really the direction we've gone with this. It's a 9-month course of all video teaching and online Zoom oriented. People bring teams, team breakouts. I do most of the teaching. Gary comes in and does some, Gary Stepp in your conference comes in and does some teaching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I over the years have learned to do video, and it just shows you people can do that.
Yeah. All right. So let's get back to where we're at today and what we're trying to accomplish. What are we trying to accomplish in digital worship, Cathy?
Well, let me just tell you kind of my purpose, which is to make new disciples. That's really the reason for my ministry. And I've been doing this about 30 years. And one day, God came into my life. Prior to that, I was just like what they talk about in the Bible. I was like walking around seeing blurs, and things got clear. And God changed my life. And, I'm super artsy and creative and all of that. But I'm a startup person, and startup is a phenomenal way to reach new people. So God has made it possible for me to do things that I love to do and keep focusing on making new disciples and come alongside churches. And the online platform, I mean, it's where it's at today, because everybody that you want to reach in your mission field, whatever that is online. Everybody's online, and so I would say most churches are not taking advantage of that. They don't understand the online platform. And most of what I see online is churches kind of really doing stuff for their own people. And I mean, even in your church, you're very outreach oriented, but I noticed that stuff that would belie that you're not totally thinking about what the online platform.
And you just took your gloves off right there.
People
I'm a
tell me
little nervous. I don't usually get very nervous, but I mean, we're going to show the dust under my bed right here.
Well, you do such a great job. I mean, it's funny. I find it amusing that, we started with you because you're a church that a lot of churches aspire to be like your church. So
Well, I felt like if I was going to ask other pastors
yeah.
to basically have a public critique, I needed to start with myself.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
I think if you could, so I have some statistics that I think would be helpful to people to hear. So you and I talked previously about Nona Jones and her book, from social media to social ministry, which is a
awesome
really,
book.
People need to get
book.
that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, from that book, I learned hundreds of thousands of people every year are searching for online worship or some phrasing like that. So like 7,500 people a week. Now, what's happened, so I've also listened to some of Dave Kinnaman's research, and something like 48% of people in the last month or 5 weeks haven't gone anywhere. They're not going live, they're not going digitally.
Yeah.
About 40% are still attending and mostly online, but 23% are going to other online venues, either exclusively or your church and other online venues.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the big question is, why is that happening? And, it's like the same thing that happened in live space. And I'd say the word is probably engagement. People aren't engaged. And I just don't think people realize how fast online is. If people walked into your live space, you've got about 7 minutes to engage them.
Mm-hmm.
If people log on to your worship service, you have somewhere between 3 and 10 seconds.
Wow. Yeah.
If they log on to your website, you have 0.005 seconds. So
gotta happen fast.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you have to know your context and your mission field, your people. You have to know how to communicate with them and need quality. And your mission field tells you what's quality. I mean, so it's very subjective. There's just not one right way or one right answer, which is part of how this becomes complex. But what we're really trying to do with that R2L training is to help churches create more than one campus. So you have an online campus and you have a local campus, and they ought to be feeding each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, you talk about the future. It's not really the future, it's the present. I mean, online's been going on for 10, 15 years.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think online has been going on, well, in the middle of the adaptation curve, it's just been broadcasting your service online. And on the front end of the adaptation curve is people who've actually been building online only campuses.
Right.
That's like the just broadcasting your worship service, very passive thing.
Right. Yes, it is. Totally is. Yeah. And yet you need it. You need the worship service, and it needs to be quality in some way. You have to have certain components there in order to engage people in the world they're living in, which is very fast, and right at the fingertip. Yeah. People can manage their viewing that way, and that's what they do.
All right. So I think you piqued my curiosity and hopefully our viewers' curiosity as well.
Yeah.
So over the last couple of weeks, you've been dropping in on our worship services. Friends, this is like what happens when you have a coach or consultant drop in on your worship services. All the technological wheels fall off. So you were like in one of our worship services where we got shut down, the live stream, like you couldn't get in it. You're like, it was, I'm like, oh, gee whiz, like let's have, it's always the second week of when you try something new. The first week it goes fine, then you get like proud, and then the second week all the wheels fall off. So you've been paying attention a couple different weeks, not just that 1 week, because we all got the outlier of things not working. And you're going to zero in on a couple of key elements in our worship service up to the sermon.
Yes.
And explore that. So I like I said, I'm a little nervous. I don't know everything you're going to say. I got a little idea. We've talked a little bit about it, but you're getting kind of a mostly unfiltered conversation here. All right. So Cathy, where are we going to start?
Well, let's, if you want to pull up that slide, we'll start with your website. And I think, what you just said there too is actually really good news. It just shows you how much leeway you have to make mistakes. I mean, you've got room here. I mean, you do. And so this is what happens when you go to the website. If I kind of went on there as a lurker, like
Yeah,
I'm looking for
you have found like the weakest link of everything that we do. It's the very first slide.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So here's a great coaching question. Tom, what do you see when you look at that slide?
Text, lots of
Yes,
text.
lots of text.
Yeah.
Right. It's too much information. So if you want to go to, and like if you click that here, all the information you need to know here, it's more information.
Yeah. And badly formatted.
Yes. This is not what you see when you're going to churches that have adapted well to online. So if you want to go to that next. So Connexus Church, some of you know Kerry Newhoff, that's his church. I mean, the very first thing you see is something about the current worship service. And here's a home page from a church in your conference, Narden Park. That's a church I coached. And I mean, they've done a phenomenal job of redoing their stuff. Look at that, very clean and concise and precise.
It's really sweet.
Yes. And so then I went over to, you can do the next slide, over to Sioux Falls to Embrace Church. And, their Sunday morning web page looks completely different than this. They've got their video streaming and, 3 buttons where you can access their live service. And this is a phenomenal question for Dave as to how this gets done, but something that I think we'll answer the next time we talk. But this is what your web page ought to look like.
Yeah.
Relational and simple. I mean, people, it's like you go to try to find worship services of churches and you can't find them.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that's something we're well aware of. And we actually we've been shopping around for a company to consult with to help us sort of build that. And I'm so excited. I met with our project manager. We've picked a company. It's actually like literally within walking distance of our building, which doesn't mean much these days since we're barely ever in the building, but it is in our neighborhood. And I met with the project manager this week. So that was the top priority. I was like, we have got to fix our website.
Right. Because at that point, that's throwaway now. I mean, and that's something that you look at that and that's what you see on most churches. And that's really geared to their own people. It's not geared to a new person.
Now, I've got a question for you about that, because my sense is that websites have become less important.
Right.
So we some of the reason we haven't updated our website is because we lost like the skill or talent to know how to do it.
Yeah.
Inside of our staff, but like Facebook and YouTube seem so much more important right now than the website. To talk a little bit about that.
Well, so my son's an IT director and of an ad agency, so that's a great resource.
There you go.
But I mean, in our conversations, he and I mean, he says you need to have a website, but everything is simplified. So I just redid my website. He helped me way scaled down. And I started working with a social media specialist she attended some of my seminars with her church. She's at Ann Arbor, and she recently graduated from the University of Michigan. And so I actually have employed her to help me. We just did a new Facebook page. So, you're tying that together. You're tying your worship service to your web page, to your, to your Facebook page, to your website, and to your purpose, your primary purpose, which is to make new disciples. That's why we exist, so all of that connects.
One of the things that I've done a lot more, this is kind of one of these pandemic things. I went to the gym quite often before, but now the gym is shut down. So I've been working out at home with this thing called a suspension trainer, TRX. And I've actually worked out more at home than I have more consistently because it's not the drive time, it's faster and everything. But you go on their website and they've got these free videos that are different trainers from actually all over the world. And you can filter them You can filter it by the particular trainer that you like. You can filter it by upper body, lower body. You can filter it by the length of time you want to spend. That's what I've said to this company that we've hired. I said, can we build something like that our website is an aggregator, and make something, and it's actually like it's all housed in YouTube. These TRX training videos are housed in YouTube, but then their website pulls them in and filters them in a way that it makes it accessible all on that one page. And I'm thinking, can we do that so that it filters by the speaker, by the campus that you're, because we have multiple campuses, by the topic or something like that.
Yes. So, I mean, this is consistent with what I'm hearing out there and have thought myself, and I'm seeing other people do. And, one thing that I think is really important to say is that, I mean, you're at a mid to moving up to large, very large, moving into the larger category of church. And so you have a totally different budget. And what I would like to show people is what they can do without that budget. I mean, you can find things online. Really, I just find churches, they're not going to other churches' websites even. I mean, go to big church websites and see what they do and learn how to adapt your own website to that.
Yeah. So website is still important.
It is,
but even again, like I think if you look at YouTube is easier. Like you can make playlists and have those on your channel. Like, so you can have a worship playlist, or like we have a cover song playlist, or like different podcasts.
That's right. Yeah. But you can do that you can do it on your website. I mean, there's ways to link all these things.
Yeah.
Which I'm not totally familiar with, which is why we need tech people to do that.
That's the Dave Wassinger button.
Yes, right.
Is Dave still out there? Dave, are you still out there? Are you listening? There he is. You're muted though, Dave. Dave, how easy is it for the average layperson to do something like that?
Outside of remembering to unmute yourself, which apparently I still have problems with. As far as, recording services and editing down those videos to get up on different, social channels, is that?
I'd say embedding videos in your website from YouTube.
Yeah, it's usually, as long as you have access to whatever editing program you use for your website, whether that is like WordPress or Squarespace or an in-house, HTML based system or any of the other available options, you should be able to go in, grab the embed code from YouTube, and then just, put that on a page or a post for your website. And
hey, could you look up a YouTube how-to video real quick and just post that in the comments section, and then Leslie will post it out on the Facebook. So
yeah, sure.
All right, Dave, we're gonna send you back to the background here. All right,
back to your cave.
back to the Unabomber cave there that he's in. Dave's not really a Unabomber. But Dave and I are very good friends, so we really.
That's never going to go away now that you said that.
Yeah. So Cathy, let's move on here. We've talked about kind of the website and how bad it is. But I hope it gets better.
You're on the road to improvement.
What do you want to do next?
Well, let's look at the next slide, because I want to show your pre-service slides that you did, your slideshow, which was another area I thought, it's so. Like if you're a church like Thousands in Worship, I mean, you don't really see any of that. They kind of post the sermon, a lot of them, because some of the speakers are so well known. But some churches, like they're in the Thousands in Worship, you're going to see this very high quality music and worship, and then you're going to go into the sermon. That's how they're doing their online stuff. But they're doing these slideshows in the building, and what I wonder is why some of them are not doing them online. And for many churches that are much smaller, this is actually an area they can improve and start to put their best foot forward. And what I see on most slides, and I saw this on yours, is usually too much information. Again, now this is not a bad slide, because it's very clear what you want people to do. You want people to search for the app, and you give them the code, and it's very simple. It's very straightforward. But it also does not have a look. And this is what I think, you want your churches to be, or your slides like this to be cohesive. So if you could go to the next slide. So what I did was to go and look at, let's see, what is the next slide?
The next slide's an MSU slide. Do you want that one up?
Okay, yeah, that would be great, because this is how churches can figure out how to make things look in their area. I did a bunch of research on South Lansing because I knew you were in South Lansing, and couldn't find much. So I went to East Lansing, to what I knew something about, went to the website of the university.
Yeah.
And you can go to the next one. You see how clean this is, just an absolutely clean look.
Simple.
And color coordinated. That's your theme. And I saw this when you put Dave's thing up there too. His university had the same sort of thing, was very, very clean and simple. So now let's go to the next slide, which is your space.
That's
And
LCC.
yeah, this is right.
College.
So that, and something you've told me about your context, you'd say it's fast, you know, and your slides were anything but that. So, I mean, this is a very clean, I went to find your color scheme. This is your digital cafe, which is very modern, you know, and so I took those colors and I put a slide together. So you can go to the next one. And that is kind of like there's your colors and there's your logo. Now, to me, I want to talk about this logo for a second here, because I like the picture, the S in the circle, that's awesome. But what you've featured in this logo is your name, which I don't think is where the value is.
Okay.
I think the value is in your curious, creative, and compassionate. That actually is what really says who you are. And so, like, if I'm looking for a church, I now know I can ask questions without being ridiculed. I can have fun doing it, and I can care about other people. And so it's not just all about me.
Okay.
And I mean, this is you. This is who you are, you know, and this is who your church is. So
yeah, we would call those are our 3 core values: curious, creative, and compassionate.
So that I redid this, so that was brought out. You can go to the next slide. And I put Sycamore Creek a little bit into the background and brought out the curious, creative, and compassionate, kept your logo and put your website there so that people knew. I mean, you got your Facebook stuff down here. Maybe your Facebook page should go up there. But I mean, this is one way to do a thematic slide. So then I used this for every slide that I did afterwards. And we can go to the next one. And this is your redone app. So now you can see, I even took out some verbiage because it's now super clear. Here's another thing I see churches do. You had a loop, a pre-service loop, which, you know, if you got a 5-minute loop online is too short to really do a loop. So what I think makes a lot more sense is to actually do a linear, you know, 20 to 30 seconds per slide and let people absorb it before going on to the next slide. Don't do a loop. I mean, you would do a loop in your building for 20 minutes if you have that, but this is just a different medium, you know? So, and, you know, and I don't put this, when I'm talking with churches and trying to help them coordinate their worship, I actually do this second, because this is a way for you to communicate who your church is. And if every one of these slides is something of quality, every slide is a slide that can be shared. You know, and that's what you want, is people from within your campus sharing to new people and inviting them to participate.
So you're getting on something as well that we're aware of, and we've the same group that we've hired to help us with a website. On the list of things I went through with our project manager yesterday was all of these slides to make them brand visually.
Right.
So.
Well, there's different ways to do this. I just picked a way that was consistent with the only thing that I knew that was in your area, because I don't really know your mission field. And if I'm looking at your slides prior to your worship service, what I see is, this was the only word I can think of. And I don't mean to be offensive, but it's going to sound offensive. It was grungy, a grungy look. And I thought, now, is that who your mission field is? Because if that's who it is, this is the wrong look for you.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a way, it does get at the fast because it's clean, you know, it's modern.
Sure.
So we can do a couple more slides if you want, just to show, because there's a couple other ideas. Here's one that, again, it's not bad because it tells you where to get the information. It just was too quick and you got too much on there. Those should be separated. And then if you go to the next slide, you're going to your Connect card. which is very confusing. I mean, you got the orange print up there. It's just really hard to see.
Yeah.
So let's just redo those. Go to the next slide. And so I did that because I didn't have any image, but I mean, you could have a picture of your own people praying. I mean, like when I was on staff at a very large church, I was the director of church planting there, and I was there for like 5 years, and it blew me away when I first started working there. I mean, I'd walk through the hallways and just see people praying with each other. And I mean, I hadn't had any model of that before there. And I mean, that was really what fueled their church. And prayer in today's culture, that's what people are looking for. That's one of the things you're seeing in the
talk about being able to do this. You know, you're not a graphic designer. I'm not a graphic designer.
Right.
And I feel like I've always had this sort of secret measure of success of the day that I get to hire a full-time communications director who's a graphic designer, does video, web, everything.
Right.
And that was long before the pandemic. That was kind of one of my underlying things. But talk to us a little bit about. I mean, you've put these together. Again, not as a graphic designer, but talk to the church that doesn't have that any of that specialty inside of it.
Right. Well, again, you know, you need to get out there and look and see what's out there. Go look at slides, go look at websites, go look at, you know, just Google search how to make a good slide. I mean, everything's online, everything. I used to get trained on Apple products at the Apple store. That's all video stuff right now. So you can just find everything. And
there's one resource I've found, or one of my staff members came across this that might be helpful along these lines. It's called Adobe Spark. It's basically like Adobe making a very user-friendly layperson's graphic design software. It's just all online. Like it's not something you can download.
There's that. Yep. And there's also, you can purchase templates. I mean, I actually used a template for portions of these that gave me some of the print and things like that.
All right. So there's several more slides here that are kind of our junk, but I'm going to skip over those because nobody has any more junk let's go to the next section that you wanted to talk about.
Let me just say one thing here and you told me I could interrupt you, so I am.
Please interrupt.
The thing that I think that I want people to grasp is I tried to go with what you did. I kind of adapted from what you had, but the thing that you see out on most websites of larger churches is people. So start taking pictures, and that can go on your slides. If you've got pictures and image, that's what things are being defaulted to these days. Movies, videos are just, and they don't have to be super high quality. They have to be engaging, relational, you know. So go ahead.
So let's talk about I don't know, you might call this evangelism or community engagement section. You wanted to show something else that we've done here.
Yeah.
You want me to set it up, or you want to?
Sure. No, you set up your video there.
All right. So one of the things we've been in this, one of the things that we've tried to do, I feel like a piece that we do really well with is networking with local artists. And we've had this young woman, she's a theater and music major from MSU, and she was in a play that was hosted in our building, or actually we produced it. It was a stage adaptation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s Letter from Birmingham Jail. And she just had an absolutely amazing voice. She'd never been to our church before, being in this play. And afterwards, we came back to her, and we've come back to her several times and say, hey, this is pre-pandemic. Would you come and sing this song? We do a lot of secular music that's kind of connects with the theme.
Yeah.
And it's never worked for her, but we reached out to her. We're in this series called Chasing Carrots. And one of the carrots that we chase in our culture is fame. And a song that goes really well with that is Lady Gaga's Applause, where she's talking about, I live for the applause, applause, applause. So we went back to Isa, and instead of her having to come in, we said, hey, would you record yourself singing this like karaoke style? And then we did some sort of magic on the video editing side to make it into a music video. And we have like a full 4-minute version of that. And we've done several of these now, a full 4-minute version of it. But we didn't want to launch that before the worship service. So we made a little 30-second teaser video that we tagged her on when we sort of loaded it out there on social media. So that's the setup here, and we'll show you this again. This is just the teaser, the 30 seconds of this video. You'll get a sense of it.
I stand here waiting for you to bang the gong, to crush the critics saying, is it right or is it wrong? If only fame and an ivy, baby, could I bear? Being away from you, I found nothing but in here. I live for the applause, applause, applause. Live for the applause, 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 applause. Live for the way that you cheer and scream for me. The applause, applause, applause. Give me the thing that lights on. Put your hands up, make them shine. Give me the thing that lights on. Put your hands up, make them shine.
Awesome.
We had a fun time doing that with her, and then we went back to her and we said, hey, do you have any friends who you think would like to do this as well? And so she connected us with another friend who's a theater and a music major, and we're in the process right now of making another music video with this other friend who we've never met actually face to face. We've only met digitally, and we've now done this with maybe 3 or 4 different people. And I feel like I've found one of the things that's been fun about it, or like I'm understanding, is church is more dispersed than it was. It's like, so when we tagged her on that, she had like 30 or 40 friends who were all commenting on it on her Facebook page. I don't know how many of them ended up in worship, but I feel like that commentary was a little bit part of worship. It was at least kind of evangelistic in nature in that respect.
Well, so this is like a really important topic because, you know, you're trying to build an online community, and the engagement of people is very relational. So, I mean, I think what you're just a natural born networker, but I think it might be helpful just to talk a little bit about that, if we can do that. So I did that just out of curiosity, because I know that you use matchup.com. So I wanted to see what it was like or meetup.com in my own area. So I researched that, and I found in my own area a long list of all these things that are going on for spirituality, and like 1 or 2 things of Christianity, and those were super traditional. So I thought, this is a way to make a connection in the area. And this is what you have to do and think about. It's like, now you're pulling back how you connect all these things. If you have an online campus, somebody is responsible for doing this work, putting yourselves out there. I mean, like, you could host a Bible study of like, did God really cause the pandemic? Or, can you pray away bad news? I mean, because those are misconceptions people have about Christianity and like real life questions. And prayer is a huge topic right now. So if you're doing that, and then you also go and follow your congressperson, your mayor, your school principals, local business people, theater people, people that are known in the area, just follow them online. They'll likely follow you back. You become connected. If you do a sermon series on this stuff, now you have somebody to invite to come and speak, and you have people to invite to attend who are from outside the church, who are in your Bible study.
We're doing this Sunday, we're doing a blessing of the devices for the local middle school, and we built relationships with them. I have at least 2 teachers, the principal, an administrator from the Lansing School District, and I think a handful of families. And we'll do that inside a Zoom meeting, inside the worship service on a HD TV. And we did a Facebook ad for that event, and I've reached out to all the teachers and connected with them. And again, it's just sort of relentless creative networking.
Well, it's invitation. I mean, it's just, we have to be, if we're serious about making disciples, we want to invite people into the experience. Do you have time to show that other video just to kind of take a look at?
Yeah, the Wonder Woman video.
Yeah, because video production is actually a pretty big deal. And, I think churches need to get comfortable with it. And the one that you did of Isa is at a level that a lot of churches won't be able to attain yet.
Well, let me just tell people that that was all done by looking on YouTube for how-to videos.
Right.
Like, how do you split her up in 4 quadrants? How do you put 5 panels across the screen? There's a video for every single one of those.
There it is.
Do it on whatever software you're
Right.
using.
Yep.
But this one is a lot more simple, because it was just an interview with a woman that I met at the South Lansing Business Association's
There you go.
when we received an award for this patio upgrade that we did on the front end of our building pre-pandemic. And I learned that she was part of this League of Enchantment, which they dress up as superheroes and go visit people in the hospital. And I knew, because we plan worship way before, like, we know what we're doing months before we ever get there. I knew we had a Wonder Woman series coming up, because Wonder Woman was supposed to come out this summer. It hasn't yet. And she plays Wonder Woman when she goes to the hospital. And I was like, Katie, can we interview you? Actually, originally she was going to come in costume and be in the service and then go visit our kids and everything. But now the pandemic. So instead, this is what we ended up doing.
Yeah. But I took
in a Zoom meeting.
Right. And I took the sound out of the video, but these are very easy to do. And, the thing that I think is important to do is to utilize some headings that you can usually are in most software like that was not on the video, to identify people. And if you had a slide in your pre-service loop, put it back here. This is how you start connecting parts of the service together.
Yeah.
And this actually gives information on how to connect with the League of Enchantment. Yeah. And this is something that's super shareable, that your church is doing, because your church gave money to them, I remember, from the service. Yeah. And so, this is how you start connecting all the parts of the service.
Well, that was a fun part of that interview, was I was able to say, hey, in lieu of what you all are doing in the pandemic, our church wants to donate to the League of Enchantment. So we're going to do that. And she was spectacular. And actually,
awesome. Yeah.
I mean, there's probably groups like that in wherever you're at.
Totally.
But, you can get Batman there. You can get, Superman, all kinds of stuff.
But, you don't want to just do random stuff. I mean, it's not like you're throwing spaghetti up on the wall to see if it's going to stick. I mean, this is very thematic. That's kind of what we're going to be looking at when we look at sermon development, is how that drives all of this.
Yeah, it was very tightly connected with the Wonder Women series. All right, so I'm looking at the time here, Cathy. I want to make sure that people remember that they can put questions in the Q&A or in the comments on Facebook. We were going to dedicate a little more time to the host, but can you do that quickly with us as far as like what do we need to improve when it comes to hosting?
Well, I think, again, every part. So just to clarify, churches need to have a digital online host that kind of runs the service online. And they usually aren't visible. They're usually just there by digitally. And so, but they have the opportunity here is to draw people out. And if you're doing any of this on Facebook, for example, you can capture names if people post. So, then you can do outreach. You can follow up with them. Like, how did you follow up with all those people that posted on Isa's site? I mean, did you do that? And can you do that? I mean, how do you do that in a way that is not overbearing? Mm-hmm. And so this is part of how this happens, is through the host. And the host can ask questions like, if you had a slide up on the League of Enchantment, I mean, you could ask the question, who's the bravest woman Mm-hmm. Who's Wonder Woman in your life? Or like prayer. If you need prayer, here's how you do this. if like your church in a pub, have you ever been to church in a pub? Have you ever gone to, a beer church or something like that?
Yeah.
So you get an opportunity. A lot of times I see, in especially very large churches, I've like lurked on their Facebook services, and you get all this rah, stuff, and it's so insider.
Mhm.
And it's like, even they're not really thinking about how you make
Yeah.
personal
We
relationships.
started doing way more of that, and I don't know how much of that you got to see, but especially recently we started. This is maybe jumping ahead or previewing the next session or
Yeah,
webinar, but
that's good.
I'm trying to turn my preaching much more into like almost like a conversation, like talking about something, and say, all right, put in in the comments right now, how do you think about that, or
Right.
who is somebody, or what's an
Right.
example, or tell a
Yep.
story about.
Yep.
So that the sermon is less of like a didactic teaching,
Right.
and it's much more of a conversation going on between me visually
Right.
and in the comments.
Well, and that's one of the things, like when we do our teaching in the R2L, like one of the segments we're doing is teaching people how to actually talk about faith. And it's like, how is it interactive and not a lecture,
Yeah. Yeah.
and actually recognizes the opening that God has really provided for you,
Yeah.
and having a conversation with somebody. How do you learn to listen? And that, I mean, that's all, this is all interwoven with the belief that God is actually in this with you.
Yeah. Now, speaking of interaction and conversations, we've told people that we're going to do some Q&A. So
Yeah.
Leslie has been hiding and lurking in the background
Yeah.
right there with Dave. And I'm just looking quick on Facebook, and I see lots of questions.
We have several questions.
Facebook, and you can, if you're here in Zoom, you can post them in the Q&A or perhaps in the chat, and Leslie's just paying attention. So Leslie, what are people curious about?
Yeah, Kim DeLong is asking, what are the implications of licensing with making music videos like the one that you guys made?
Yeah. Well, you have to have licenses, and there's licenses available. I'm not totally sure how it works with making a video, but if you have a license, you can actually sing cover songs live. And so how would anybody know that Isa is singing in a video?
So this is something we spent a massive amount of time in the last several weeks looking into this, because that was where the technology fell off. Is we played a clip from a Britney Spears music video, and Facebook shut the live stream down.
Yep.
And so there's a couple things that we're doing now. I mean, showing that in the live worship service that's not streaming is not necessarily a copyright problem.
Right.
And it may not be a problem even in the live stream, depending on how much you're using and the way you're using it and so on. But if Facebook doesn't recognize that, and it shuts everything down, then it's pretty frustrating. So there's two things there's a handful of things that we've looked into along those lines. And one of them so there are YouTube stars who make their living on making cover videos. And then there are companies out there that manage the copyright stuff for you for that. Mm-hmm. And we've just begun to explore that, where you can upload it into that website, and they then manage all of that, and you buy into it kind of like you buy into CCLI. But in the meantime, we created a private Facebook page, and we upload everything in there to see like what Facebook is going to do with it and so on. And whether
you pre-test it.
We pre-test it before we do it live.
That's good.
And there's definitely things that Facebook doesn't like, and other things that it does. But we're heavily exploring that, because that's the direction we want to go. We want to make that basically be in that world of cover videos. And we found it particularly evangelistic with people.
Yep.
And
totally.
bringing, Isa doesn't have all the resources to make herself look that good in a video. So we just, you can, if you everything exists in a how-to video on YouTube. Yeah. So search how to do copyright with cover videos.
Well, the links and the license opportunities ought to be published. I mean, if you can do that, and I've got some too. I do know that, the safest thing is if you have somebody who can sing a cover, you can get the right license for it, and that'll work. And YouTube's different than Facebook. YouTube has different rules.
So some of what, like YouTube is more lenient than Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that it's played out on YouTube is that that most of those artists like the covers because it gives their music more
Right.
visibility.
Right.
And what YouTube has done is they just so if you tried to monetize it, the money would go to the artist. So it just says they won't let you monetize it, or the money goes to the artist. So, which that's fine. We're not trying to make any money off of it anyway.
Yep. Good.
All right. What else, Leslie, what other questions have we got?
Okay, then Matt Cray, you know that guy.
I know that guy.
He says, I wish we had a list of resources of high quality art videos, music videos, poetry readings that we could use in worship without copyright infringement.
Yeah.
Cathy, do you know any, lists or ways to search that out?
Well, the searching is just searching it out. I mean, I think the utilization of other people's videos is really complicated. And, if you were going to try to, I would be working with people on actually reproducing the videos themselves. I mean, doing the poetry themselves and that sort of thing. I've never actually researched some of that stuff, but that's where it would have to be. I mean, there's just so much information out there. It's really hard to absorb it all.
I think there's, for example, like with the stuff that we're doing, we also have a lot of connections. We've really invested a lot in relationships and networking with artists in Lansing. So we have a lot of spoken word poets and that we work with. And we have a series coming up in September called I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Still Listening. It's about having grace-filled political conversations. And we reached out to all of our spoken word poets and said, hey, have you got anything along these lines? And boy, the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
And these are all original works. And so anytime you see anything that we're doing, we're happy to share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Leslie, what other questions are being asked out there?
Let's see. I don't think there's any more on Facebook, and we haven't had any on Zoom.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask a little more. What is, Cathy, if you can go a little bit more into, why can't a host be like a pastor or somebody involved with the service? Or should it be the same person consistently week after week?
Well, you definitely want to have more than one because you're trying to build into the system, people who begin to see a sense of calling in their own life. I mean, this is really discipleship development. And, how does somebody take their gifts and multiply them? So, you need some sort of a system where you have more than one person doing that. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that if a pastor does a lot of that stuff, I mean, not only are they just busy, but people tend not to be as honest in front of the pastor, so you want somebody who's like a layperson, who's a peer, who can relate to people. And maybe at a place where people can look at that person and say, they're growing in their faith and I can aspire to that. And I mean, that is a huge, peer influence is just a huge thing in developing disciples. And it's happened true in my own life, seeing people that I related to and watching what they were doing, what God was doing in their lives. And it's like, I want that in my life.
Yeah.
So I think the system and just having it be a lay person is really important.
I would add just another layer to that and some of this depends on what, there's one big choice you have to make right up front, whether you're going to pre-record worship services and pre-produce everything or whether you're going to do it live.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it live, which is what the direction we've gone, we feel like there's an edge to live that gets lost in the pre-recording and a little more authenticity or feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's I don't know, that's a hair that may not be worth splitting depending on what resources you have available to you. But if you're doing it live like we are, there's no way that I can even keep up with both what's happening live in the space and we're actually getting ready to kind of start to do some hybrid stuff because the tech setup that we've done allows us to do that better with a better quality.
Well, most churches are going to need to do a hybrid, first of all. They just don't have the resources, you know, until you reach a certain level. You've kind of you're moving up into that level where you have more resources. And then the other thing is that the majority of people that access your worship service access it after it's done. Mm-hmm. They're accessing it on Sunday night and sometime during the week. And you can actually make those almost live by, you know, like you can do a search and figure out what's the peak time. So let's say it's Monday at noon, run a worship service at Monday at noon, invite people to come to it and have your live host there. And
yeah, we're getting ready to do that where we do it live and then we do a watch party again.
Yeah. Yes.
Another time with one of my staff people.
Okay, guys, do we have time for one more question?
Really quick, really quick.
Matt Cray asks, he said he heard a Facebook expert say you don't need a countdown for more than 30 seconds because the people are there already. Cathy, what do you think?
I think that everybody's learning this as we go. And I mean, I've had questions about the stuff I've told you here today, so I don't know the answer to that. The countdown video thing that I wonder about, here's what I wonder, is if a person logs on in the middle of your service or anywhere in the service, and they are wondering how long is this segment going to take, you know, that a countdown video could be helpful in various points of the service.
That reminds me.
I've told that to people and they're like, oh no, we can't do that.
Yeah. That reminds me. So, I mean, one of the inspirations for our worship service has been a sports radio talk show.
Yeah.
And if you watch like Sports Center or whatever, they actually have like a running agenda on the side that tells you like, what's coming up next.
Yeah. Right.
That's an intriguing idea that I've not even thought about. But
I did that in one of my training videos. I actually put the countdown clock in and put the running thing on the side. Yeah. Because online behavior is very different. The other thing that I think is important is if each of these segments becomes shareable, the number one length of time for Facebook for videos to watch is actually 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So you got about 3 minutes to do a decent video of something and get it out there to share, to teach people about your church and invite them.
Well, friends, join me in thanking God for Cathy. Give it up for Cathy. Woo, 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 in the comments section there on Facebook. And if you know somebody who could use this webinar, you will find it now. It'll be on the Reach Summit Facebook page. You can share it with them. We'll eventually have an audio-only version on our Reach Resources page. So be sure to check out our Facebook page. It's the Reach Summit Facebook page. Just search there on Facebook and you will find it. Share the video on your timeline so that others in your church can gain some inspiration in thinking about how to help make digital worship more effective and to be a different kind of church, which again, like digital is here to stay, friends. So it may not be so different going forward. The Reach Movement team is working hard to build a movement of churches that grow and multiply. So be sure to check out some of the other resources that we provide. Again, you will find most of those on our Reach Summit Facebook page or our reachmovement.org Facebook page. Come back on the third Thursday in September and October. We're really excited. On September 17th at 1 p.m., Pastor Stephanie Norton of Hartford United Methodist Church is going to join us. Hartford is a very small little church, so it's going to be a lot more like perhaps the average church that is out there. By the way, Cathy, you kept calling us a big church, but I want you to know, like in any individual worship service live that we used to have, we maybe have 30 to 70 people. So we're not.
Your worship attendance, the last I heard, was in the 300 range.
Yeah, it's 250 to 300 over the whole, but that's
large.
5 services.
But that's large.
Yeah. But Stephanie is not in anything like that. And so we're going to take a look at, Cathy's going to talk about the sermon and engage Stephanie's sermon. Cathy, I think Stephanie's actually a coach. You're coaching her. You have coached her. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I might have a couple things to add into that conversation as well.
Cool.
And then on October 15th at 1 p.m., we're going to be joined by Pastor Matt Bastay of Valley Church in Allendale. And we're going to take a look at basically the sermon onward on into the week. So I think all of us are asking, I know I am, discipleship isn't just showing up for a video on Sunday morning. So what comes afterward? Be sure to check out reachresources.org, where there's a whole back library of a bunch of interviews that I have done with pastors, authors, consultants, and coaches about all kinds of areas of ministry. We've recorded, I think, 25 plus episodes that cover everything from navigating conversations where you don't agree, to congregations organizing for racial reconciliation, to helping each member grow in their discipleship. There's lots of good stuff on reachresources.org. So don't miss our back catalog of great conversations and webinars there. And be sure to stop into reachsummit.org, where you can stay up to date about our annual Reach Summit. This year, we're going all digital. The Reach Summit is Saturday, October 24th. Jake Mulder, the co-author of Growing Young, is a keynote speaker for us, as well as Rachel Gilmore, planting pastor at the Gathering and Scott Memorial. It's going to be Jake and Rachel and all kinds of other awesome workshops. So be sure to sign up at reachsummit.org. Thank you so much for sitting in on our first #Digital Worship Coach webinar. And lest anyone here leave a bit or a lot overwhelmed by what you've seen and heard, let's end with a powerful reminder from Ephesians, Paul's letter to the Ephesians. And now to God, who is able to do infinitely more than you can ask, all that you can ask or imagine, online or in person, according to the power that works within us, the power of God's Spirit. To God be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus, whether it's the church physical or the church online, in all generations, forever and ever. And all who agreed, said, or typed, or commented, or texted, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Peace out, friends. We'll see you next month.